Medieval castles were built as fortified centers of power. Their defenses combined walls, towers, moats, and traps designed to stop every type of attack. Hidden tunnels, boiling oil, and psychological tactics made them more than stone structures. Each element worked together to protect the people inside and keep enemies out. Number 1. The deadly gatehouse. The gatehouse was the main point of defense in most medieval castles. It combined several layers of protection in one structure. The outer gate usually had a drawbridge that could be raised quickly during an attack. When lifted, it blocked entry and created a physical barrier over the moat. Behind it stood a heavy portcullis made of iron or thick wood. It moved vertically within grooves in the stone walls. Chains or counterweights allowed guards to drop it instantly. Once lowered, it locked in place and could not be lifted from outside. Attackers who managed to pass the first gate entered a narrow passage between two portcullises. This area was called the killing zone. Defenders stood above it in small chambers and attacked through openings in the ceiling known as murder holes. They dropped boiling water, stones, sand heated in cauldrons, or burning oil. Some used quicklime to blind soldiers and horses. Arrows were fired through small vertical slits in the walls. The confined space prevented large groups from fighting effectively. The ground was often uneven or sloped upward to slow movement. If the enemy broke through the first barrier, another portcullis blocked the inner gate. Some castles had up to 3 gates in a row. Defenders used crossfire from both sides to strike attackers stuck between them. The design made retreat difficult and caused high casualties. The gatehouse also contained rooms for guards and storage for weapons. Chains, tools, and hot liquids were kept close for immediate use. Heavy doors reinforced with iron bands stood behind the last portcullis as a final barrier. In some castles, the ceiling and walls were built with extra thickness to resist rams and fire. The gatehouse was both an entry point and a self-contained fortress. Its structure forced attackers into a controlled space where every advantage belonged to the defenders. Number 2. The moat and the secret passages. The moat served as the first major obstacle for any attacking force. It surrounded the castle and reduced direct access to the walls. Many moats were filled with water taken from nearby rivers or streams. In dry areas, moats were empty but deep and lined with stakes or rubble to make crossing slow and dangerous. Their main purpose was to stop siege engines and limit the movement of troops and cavalry. A filled moat also weakened battering rams since wet ground reduced traction and stability. Attackers who tried to bridge a moat faced constant fire from archers stationed on towers and walls. Some moats had systems that allowed defenders to control the water level. Channels and sluices connected the moat to natural water sources. Guards could flood the area or drain it depending on the situation. The depth and width varied depending on terrain and resources. Large castles like Bodiam and Caerphilly in England used moats as part of their overall water defense strategy. In some cases, the water was deliberately made dirty to discourage swimming or wading. Beneath the walls, engineers built narrow tunnels known as sallyports. These were secret exits used to launch small surprise attacks or bring in supplies during long sieges. The tunnels were usually hidden behind locked doors inside the castle and often led under the moat. Some ended in nearby forests or riverbanks to allow movement without detection. Defenders used them to burn siege equipment or cut off supply lines before retreating inside. Other secret passages existed within the walls themselves. These included hidden staircases and narrow corridors linking towers and chambers. Some were built for communication between different parts of the fortress without exposure to enemy fire. In a few castles, escape tunnels were designed to allow the lord or commander to flee if the defense failed. These underground routes required advanced engineering and were often kept secret even from lower-ranking guards. The combination of moats, tunnels, and hidden routes provided flexibility in both attack and defense. They allowed defenders to control access, move undetected, and maintain supply routes when surrounded. These systems were essential for the long-term survival of fortified castles during medieval warfare. Number 3. The walls that fought back. Castle walls were built to resist long sieges and heavy attacks. Their construction followed precise engineering methods based on available materials and terrain. Most walls were built using a double layer of stone, with a core filled with rubble and lime mortar. This design absorbed impact from catapults and reduced the chance of collapse. The average thickness ranged from 2 to 6 meters, depending on the size and importance of the fortress. The outer layer used cut stone for durability, while the inner layer was made of cheaper local materials. The height of the walls usually ranged from 8 to 12 meters. They were often built on elevated ground or bedrock to prevent tunneling. Builders included a walkway along the top, known as the wall walk, where guards could patrol and shoot. Parapets and merlons gave partial cover during combat. The gaps between them, called crenelles, allowed archers to fire without full exposure. This alternating pattern of cover and opening formed the typical crenellated design visible in most surviving castles. Round towers were integrated into the walls at regular intervals. They gave defenders a wider angle of fire and eliminated blind spots. Their curved shape deflected projectiles better than square corners. The base of many walls included a sloping section known as a batter, which helped redirect falling debris and made scaling more difficult. Some castles reinforced their walls with buttresses to handle the weight of siege stones or battering rams. Spiral staircases built inside the towers always turned clockwise. This layout favored defenders descending from above, allowing them to strike with their right hand, while attackers had limited movement. Narrow arrow slits, called loopholes, were placed at different heights to cover ground and air targets. Each opening was wider inside, giving archers room to aim while staying protected. Maintenance of the walls was continuous. Damaged sections were repaired quickly after each assault. Stoneworkers used lime plaster to fill cracks and strengthen the outer face. Drainage channels prevented water from weakening the foundation. In many castles, the wall system included multiple layers, forming concentric defenses. If attackers breached the outer wall, defenders could retreat and continue fighting from the inner one. This structure made direct assault costly and often unsuccessful. Number 4. Fire, oil, and chemical warfare. Defensive fire tactics in medieval castles relied on heat, smoke, and caustic mixes. Garrison crews kept cauldrons ready with boiling water, animal fat, and pitch. They poured these through murder holes onto men at the gate. Heated sand was common because it slid under armor and burned skin. Tar and resin stuck to wood and cloth and kept burning. Defenders threw fire pots filled with pitch and oil from wall walks and hoardings. These ceramic pots broke on impact and spread flame across ladders and siege towers. Archers used cloth-wrapped arrowheads dipped in pitch and lit at the last moment to avoid early flare. Trebuchets launched larger incendiary jars to strike camps and engine parks. Stonemasons added iron grills and fire hatches near gateways so crews could drop burning loads without exposure. Quicklime featured in some actions. Powdered lime blinded men and horses when it hit wet eyes. English sources report its use at the Naval Battle of Dover in 1217 to disable French crews. Chronicle material from Crusader fronts records the use of naphtha-based mixtures by besiegers and defenders. These recipes often named sulfur and oil of earth. Byzantine Greek fire was a related but earlier naval weapon and influenced later incendiary practice. Castle stores kept fuel near key points but behind stone vaults to limit accidental fires. Water cisterns on upper levels fed bucket chains. Barrels of sand and clay were placed near doors to smother flames. Gates and sally ports were covered with fresh hides during assaults to resist ignition. Crews soaked timber hoardings before action, or replaced them with temporary wicker screens that could be dumped if they caught. Countermeasures against enemy fire were systematic. Teams pulled wet quilts over ram heads. Men shoveled earth onto burning ladders. Watch shift scanned wind and sparks from dusk to dawn. Blacksmiths repaired iron fittings that failed under heat. Miners who tried to burn wall props met smoke traps. Defenders pushed foul smoke from damp straw into galleries to drive sappers out. By the 14th century, gunpowder appeared in small quantities and added noise and sparks to sieges. Castle routines adapted with tighter storage rules and stone-lined magazines. Fire in siege warfare was logistics and timing. Crews who controlled fuel, air, and distance kept the initiative and protected the walls. Number 5. The psychology of fear. Medieval castles used visible power to lower enemy morale. High walls, tall keeps, and strong gatehouses signaled control and resources. Large banners and full heraldic displays showed legal authority and allies. Church bells and trumpets marked discipline and readiness. Beacon fires on towers warned nearby garrisons and suggested rapid support. Public punishment worked as a warning. Bodies or severed heads were displayed at gates after failed assaults. Prisoners were paraded on walls to show control of raids and ambushes. Refusal to grant burial signaled total rejection of demands. Such actions were recorded in Crusader and English border wars. Noise management shaped night pressure. Horns and drums disrupted sleep in siege lines. Shouted challenges and watch calls maintained tempo on the walls. Sudden volleys of arrows or stones kept crews awake and unfocused. False alarms forced men to form ranks repeatedly. Fatigue reduced accuracy and slowed engine work. Deception supported defense. Dummy figures with torches appeared on battlements after dusk. Extra banners were raised to suggest fresh companies. Fires were lit in unused towers to mimic full manning. Spare helmets and shields lined parapets to increase the count of visible defenders. Sentry routes were adjusted to avoid patterns that sappers could time. Signals shaped negotiation. Heralds announced strict terms from the walls to set expectations early. Fixed ransom scales and deadlines were posted to reduce hope of leniency. Refusals were delivered in formal language to display unity among commanders. Timed releases of minor prisoners spread selected news into the camps. Resource displays hid shortages. Kitchens burned strong-smelling fuel near vents to suggest plentiful meat. Water was poured from high points to show full cisterns. Carts moved in loops inside the outer ward to imitate supply activity. Spare shields were stacked near gates to imply new levies. Targeted strikes damaged confidence. Night sorties burned ladders and fascines, and then withdrew. Archers aimed at engineers and officers first. Countermining sent smoke and noise through tunnels to scare sappers. Stones were dropped without pattern to prevent timing. Sudden portcullis drops trapped small groups for display at dawn. Rituals reinforced resolve inside. Oaths were taken before relics in the keep. Pay chests were shown to garrison leaders. Duty rosters were posted and witnessed. Visible order reduced rumors and desertion. Stable routines on the wall walk projected control to the outside. Information control shaped memory of the fight. Messengers left through sally ports with selected reports to allies and towns. Chroniclers attached to lords recorded terms of defiance and success in clear form. Captured letters were read aloud on the ramparts. Names of hostile leaders were called out to deny anonymity. All steps served one aim: break the will to continue before the walls were breached.